How did a tribe of homeless nomads destroy the greatest empire on earth? Imagine a Greek king, draped in purple silk, commanding the most advanced army in the world, suddenly finding himself in chains, kneeling in the dirt before a man who grew up living in a tent. This isn't a movie script, this actually happened. But to understand how a ragtag group of refugees hijacked the ancient world, we have to rewind. We have to go back to the steppes of Central Asia around 250 BC. You see, after Alexander the Great died, his generals carved up the world. The biggest chunk went to a guy named Seleucus. This was the Seleucid Empire. It was massive. It stretched from modern-day Turkey all the way to India. It was rich, sophisticated, and incredibly Greek. They had theatres, gymnasiums, and heavy infantry phalanxes that smashed everything in their path. And then, on the fringes of this massive empire, you had the Parni. Nobody took the Parni seriously. They were nomads. They didn't build stone cities. They didn't write philosophy books. They lived on horseback, slept in tents, and drank fermented mare's milk. To the Greeks, these guys were just barbarians. Annoying, sure, but not a threat to the throne. That was the Greeks' first mistake. The Parni were led by a man named Arsaces, and Arsaces wasn't just some tribal warlord, he was an opportunist. He saw something the Greeks were too arrogant to notice. The Seleucid Empire was overstretched. They were fighting wars in Egypt, wars in Turkey, and dealing with constant rebellions. The governor of the province of Parthia, a region in northeast Iran, decided he wanted to be king. He rebelled against the Seleucids. In the chaos of that civil war, the border was left wide open. This was the moment Arsaces had been waiting for. He didn't invade with a massive siege train. He didn't march in neat lines. He and his Parni horsemen just flowed in. They swept down from the mountains and killed the rebel governor. In a blink, the nomads were in charge of the province. Now, usually in history, this is where the story ends. The big empire wakes up, sends a massive army, crushes the nomads, and goes back to lunch. And the Seleucids tried. They tried for decades. But here is where the Parni changed the game. They introduced a style of warfare the Greeks just couldn't handle. Think about the Greek phalanx. It's a porcupine of spears. It's unstoppable from the front, but it's slow. It needs flat ground. It needs to stay together. The Parni didn't play by those rules. They were exclusively cavalry. But not just any cavalry. They had horse archers who could shoot with deadly accuracy while galloping at full speed. And crucially, they could shoot backwards. You've heard the phrase, Parthian Shot. It comes from this, the Parthian Shot. They would pretend to retreat, get the Greeks to break formation and chase them, and then, wham! Turn around in the saddle and unleash a storm of arrows right into the enemy's face. The heavy Greek infantry would just march and march, getting picked apart, never able to close the distance. It was exhausting. It was demoralizing. It was death by 1,000 cuts. But winning battles wasn't enough. Here's the genius part that nobody talks about. Arsaces and his successors realized that you can't rule a civilized empire from a horse. If they wanted to stay, they couldn't just be Parni nomads anymore. They had to become something else. They started adopting the local culture. They looked at the Persians they had conquered and said, "We are the heirs of Cyrus the Great." They looked at the Greeks and said, "We love your art and your theatre." They minted coins showing Arsaces wearing a nomad's cap, but sitting on a Greek stool, holding a bow. It was perfect propaganda. To the nomads, he looked like a Khan. To the Greeks and Persians, he looked like a king. They literally rebranded themselves. They stopped being the Parni and became the Parthians. But the Greeks weren't done yet. Around 129 BC, the Seleucid king Antiochus VII decided to end this once and for all. He marched into Iran with the biggest army seen in a century, and at first, he won. He pushed the Parthians back. He took Babylon. It looked like the nomad dream was over. But the Parthian king, Phraates II, didn't panic. He knew something the Greeks didn't. Winter was coming. The Greek army was huge. Too huge. They had to spread out across different cities just to find enough food for the winter. They were comfortable, warm, and dispersed. Phraates sent spies into those cities. He told the locals, "The Greeks are eating your food and occupying your homes. Rise up and we will help you." On a prearranged signal, the cities turned on the Greek soldiers. Antiochus tried to rush his forces together, but he was ambushed by the Parthian cavalry. The Greek king, the man who thought he was reconquering the east, was killed in the snow. His son was captured. His army was annihilated. That was it. The moment the Parni nomads officially replaced the Greeks as the masters of the Middle East. They built a decentralized empire that lasted nearly 500 years. They created the first heavy cavalry, the cataphracts, ancestors of the medieval knights. They controlled the Silk Road and became the only power Rome could never defeat. Not bad for a bunch of guys who started out living in tents. It really makes you wonder about the difference between strength and adaptability. The Greeks had the strongest army, but the nomads had the flexibility to survive. If you were a Greek general facing these ghosts on horseback, knowing your heavy armor was useless against them, what would you have done to survive? Let me know in the comments below.